Hello everyone. Have you ever wondered how the same element used to disinfect swimming pools is also responsible for the safety of the water you drink every single day? Today we are going to explore the architecture of clear water, understanding large-scale disinfection paradigms ranging from chemical oxidation to sub-micron separation. Before choosing any disinfection method, water utilities must evaluate 5 universal criteria for utility scale disinfection. The first is efficacy, meaning the method must destroy pathogens within the available contact time and function across varying temperatures, pH levels, and mineral profiles. The second is safety, meaning it should leave no toxic reaction products and impart no color, maintaining ultimate potability and human safety. The third is scalability, meaning it should offer dependable availability at a reasonable cost, permitting convenient, safe, and accurate large scale application. The fourth is residual power, meaning it should leave a lingering concentration to continuously neutralize possible downstream recontamination in the distribution network. The fifth is detectability, meaning it should be amenable to rapid, simple analytical techniques in small concentration ranges to control the disinfection process. Broadly, disinfection technologies fall into two major categories. The first is chemical transformation or oxidation, which works by altering or destroying the pathogen or impurity through a direct chemical reaction. The primary agents used here are chlorine in the form of gas, chloramine, or bleach, and ozone. The key strength of this method is that it provides residual protection throughout the distribution network. The second category is physical separation using membranes, which works by forcing water through microscopic barriers to physically sieve and remove pathogens. The primary agents here are reverse osmosis, nanofiltration, ultrafiltration, and microfiltration. The key strength of this method is complete physical removal without any chemical byproducts. Let us look closer at chlorination, which is the foundational multi-tool of water treatment. In waterworks practice, disinfection is virtually synonymous with chlorination. While it is primarily used to kill pathogenic bacteria, chlorine actually operates as a multi-purpose chemical agent. It performs oxidation, neutralizing iron, manganese, and hydrogen sulfide. It performs biological control, eliminating algae and slime organisms. It acts as an aesthetic control agent, destroying taste and odor producing constituents, and it also acts as a process aid, enhancing the coagulation process. However, it is important to remember that standard doses of chlorine do not affect spores or certain viruses such as polio or viral hepatitis, and higher specific doses are required for these. An important concept to understand is the pH tipping point in chlorine efficacy. When chlorine gas dissolves in water, it forms hypochlorous acid and hypochlorite ion. Hypochlorous acid is 70 to 80 times more effective than the hypochlorite ion as a disinfectant. This hypochlorous acid predominates when the water pH is between 6.0 and 7.5, which fortunately matches the pH of most natural waters. However, there is a failure state at pH 8.5. When pH exceeds this value, 90% of the hypochlorous acid ionizes into the weaker hypochlorite ion, rendering the disinfection process highly unreliable. Now, let us understand the rules of engagement for calculating the proper chlorine dose. This involves 4 steps. The first is the clarification phase, where water must first be entirely free of turbidity, since turbidity physically impedes efficient chlorination. The second is meeting the demand, where the exact amount of chlorine needed to oxidize all organic matter, ammoniacal substances, and bacteria, known as the chlorine demand, must be satisfied. The third is establishing the residual, where a minimum free residual concentration of 0.5 milligrams per liter is added to guard against subsequent network contamination. The fourth is the contact window, ensuring a strict minimum of 60 minutes of contact time for complete pathogen neutralization. This gives us the universal formula where the total dose equals the chlorine demand plus 0.5 milligrams per liter residual. For large facilities treating more than 500,000 liters per day, chlorine gas is the primary choice due to its economy, speed, and efficiency. In terms of its chemical profile, chlorine exists as an amber liquid under pressure and becomes a greenish yellow gas when released, being 15 times heavier than water and 2.5 times heavier than air. It is a powerful lung and eye irritant with an odor threshold of 3.5 parts per million and a safety limit of 1 part per million over 8 hours. To handle this safely, a specialized mechanical injector known as Patterson's chloronome is required to measure, regulate, and administer this highly toxic gaseous chlorine automatically into the water supply without human exposure. Depending on the operational challenge faced, the chlorine strategy is tailored accordingly. For a massive urban distribution network where the pipeline runs for millions of meters and there is extremely high risk of late stage recontamination, the strategy used is chloramination, which combines chlorine with ammonia. This produces a highly persistent residual that survives long transit times with minimal chlorinous taste, though it has the trade-off of slower and inferior germicidal action compared to free chlorine. On the other hand, for heavily polluted or fluctuating source water, where there is high risk of severe intestinal infections such as E. histolytica, Welchii, or polio requiring extreme neutralization, the strategy used is superchlorination followed by dechlorination. This involves the application of massive doses of 10 to 15 milligrams per liter for 10 to 30 minutes to overwhelm severe biological threats, followed by chemical removal of the excess chlorine before public consumption. This brings us to the breakpoint curve, which explains how controlled superchlorination is achieved. In the first phase, called formation, the chlorine added reacts with ammonia to form combined chlorine, known as chloramines. In the second phase, called destruction, the additional chlorine added actively destroys these chloramines, and the residual chlorine actually falls as the dose increases. The third phase is called the breakpoint, which is the exact dosage at which all the combined chlorines are completely destroyed. Beyond this point, in the fourth phase, called free chlorine, every additional unit of chlorine added directly increases the highly effective free chlorine residual. To ensure the 0.5 mg per liter safety margin is maintained, engineers rely on rapid orthotolidine detection. This test uses analytical grade orthotolidine dissolved in 10% hydrochloric acid, which produces a readable yellow color upon reacting with chlorine. In the standard OT test, a reading taken at 10 seconds measures only free chlorine due to an instantaneous reaction, while a reading taken at 15 to 20 minutes measures free plus combined chlorine due to a slower secondary reaction. An advanced modification called the OTA test or orthotolidine arsenite test separates the free and combined residual readings distinctly and has the advantage of completely eliminating false yellow interference errors caused by naturally occurring nitrites, iron, and manganese. Moving to another powerful chemical oxidant, we come to ozonation, which offers high potency oxidation without residuals. The typical dose used is 2 to 5 milligrams per liter, requiring 80% dissolution with a contact time of 10 to 20 minutes to achieve a 0.5 milligram per liter residual in tank. The primary advantages of ozone are that it is exceptionally powerful, highly effective at degrading pesticides and complex organics, and it entirely avoids the harmful halogenated and carcinogenic byproducts associated with chlorine. However, there is a critical trade-off, which is zero distribution residual, Ozone increases organic biodegradability but leaves no residual protection, and without it, dangerous bacterial growth can occur in distribution pipes. For this reason, ozonation must always be followed by biological filtration and ultimately capped with a chlorine residual. Let us now shift focus to the membrane paradigm, which reverses the natural flow of water. In natural osmosis, solvent naturally passes through a semi-permeable membrane, moving from a low concentration solution into a high concentration solution. In reverse osmosis, this natural process is reversed by applying massive mechanical pressure ranging from 15 to 50 bar, exceeding the natural osmotic pressure. This forcibly strips pure water from the solution, producing a pristine stream on one side and concentrated waste on the other. Within the membrane spectrum, there is a clear relationship between permeability and energy demand. As the physical barrier tightens to reject smaller and smaller molecular weights, the pressure required to force water through increases exponentially. Microfiltration operates at just 1 to 2 bar with a pore size of 0.01 to 12 micrometers. Ultrafiltration operates at less than 5 bar with a pore size of 0.002 to 0.03 micrometers. Nanofiltration operates at around 5 bar with a pore size of 0.001 to 0.01 micrometers. And reverse osmosis operates at the highest range of 15 to 50 bar with the tightest pore size of less than 0.002 micrometers. Each of these physical separation technologies has a distinct application. Microfiltration targets colloidal and suspended material, sieving out particles larger than 0.05 micrometers, and is primarily used as pre-treatment for reverse osmosis, often combined with coagulation. Ultrafiltration targets organics with a molecular weight greater than 800 daltons and is used for advanced particle and macromolecule removal. Nanofiltration targets divalent ions such as calcium and magnesium along with color-forming organics, while allowing monovalent ions to pass, and is used for softening and advanced organic removal. Reverse osmosis targets monovalent ions and organics greater than 50 daltons, and its primary application is the desalination of seawater and brackish water. Finally, let us synthesize and grade these two paradigms against the 5 universal criteria we discussed earlier. In terms of efficacy, chemical transformation using chlorine or ozone is excellent to high, though vulnerable to pH shifts, while physical separation using membranes provides an absolute physical barrier that is unaffected by water chemistry. In terms of safety, chemical transformation carries a risk of toxic handling with gas and formation of halogenated byproducts, while physical separation offers complete physical purity with zero chemical byproducts. In terms of scalability, chemical transformation is highly economical and easily scaled for massive urban networks, while physical separation has high energy demand up to 50 bar, making it costly for utility scale deployment. In terms of residual power, chlorine sets the gold standard for network protection since ozone fails here, while membranes offer zero residual protection and always require chemical supplementation. And in terms of detectability, chemical transformation allows rapid, simple testing through OT and OTA tests within 10 seconds, while physical separation requires complex pressure and permeate flux monitoring. The overall conclusion is that modern water architecture requires both approaches together, where physical separation provides absolute barrier purity, backed by chemical oxidation for vital network longevity. Hope you have understood about large-scale disinfection paradigms, from chemical oxidation to submicron separation. If you found this video useful, please share with your friends and colleagues. Thank you.